Hi, I'm Joss Whedon, and this is the commentary on the Avengers. Let's start with a little history. Question I get most asked is, why on earth did they pick you to make this movie? I got that from a lot of inquisitive reporters, and it's a decent question considering this is only the second film I ever made. Has a lot to do with my history, not just of reading comic books and being a huge geek, but of knowing Kevin Feige and of the two of us talking about making a film for years when he was working at but not running Marvel. When Marvel became its own thing and Kevin became the man who reinvented the superhero movie with Iron Man, he came to me with this, mostly in advisory capacity, said, what would you do if this were your baby? And I thought about it for a while and decided that what I would do would be to make things as awful as possible for everybody involved. And of course, I'm not just referring to the characters, I'm referring to the crew. I believe that the experience of making a movie should in some way, or inevitably will in some way, reflect the film itself. So I like to fondly remember this as an enormous disaster where we were one step ahead of the crumbling earth every second, and yet somehow a small group of heroic people, and I'm mostly referring to guys who worked in VFX and certain producers, saved us from the disaster that would have engulfed us all, or that I tried to make engulf us all, or that I tried to throw certain people. I may have tried to throw certain people into the crumbling earth in order to save myself. I can neither confirm or deny that. But I did know mostly that I wanted to make a movie where being a superhero wasn't a free pass, where things were tough enough that that you would be as strong as you could possibly be and still not be enough to deal with what was going on. Because ultimately, if the film didn't work on a human level, it was never going to work at all. What you're looking at right now is NASA, the Plumbrook facility in Ohio that they very graciously let us into. It is one of the largest and most beautiful places I've seen. It is not, in fact, underground. Above it was a high school in Albuquerque, and that elevator was fake. It's all fake. But this room is 120 feet tall. It is ginormous. It is the biggest vacuum chamber in the country, maybe in the world. And they were gracious enough to let us film not only in it, but as you saw earlier, on top of it. One of the things that we desperately tried to maintain with our sort of rather bizarre location work was a sense of epic scope. And I say bizarre in the sense of you don't usually think, world crisis, let's go to Albuquerque and Cleveland. But that's where most of this happened. And it turns out that both those places were able to double for an enormous number of really exciting-looking places. But every now and then you have to find a place that is just gorgeous, and NASA works on that kind of scale. And we wanted to open big, and this let us do it.
Doctor, it's spiking again.
No one's come or gone. The cell looks clean.
One of the toughest and latest decisions made in the movie was what happens to Hawkeye. I had a beautiful backstory for him. He was part of the team from the get-go, and, in the 190-page draft that I was writing, I still didn't have anything for him to do. It was just, there was so much tonnage. There are so many characters. My first film, Serenity, involved about 9 main characters who all already knew each other or about each other, and I swore after that movie I would never do anything like that again. And about, a week into production on this thing, I just slapped my forehead and made a Homer Simpson noise. But ultimately, the idea of having Jeremy's character be turned by the man who's behind this particular curtain helped to get us rid of some of the excess characters and give him something to play. Frustrating for him to be possessed right when his character was about to manifest, and frustrating for me to have to create an emotional through line for two characters, him and Black Widow, that you only hear about until the end of the movie, since they don't ever get a chance to speak until later. But in the sort of construction of this ridiculously odd conglomeration, it did serve its purpose, and Jeremy plays it beautifully, obviously. This guy, Hiddleston. I saw Hiddleston years ago in Othello. He played Cassio when Chiwetel Ejiofor did Othello with the Donmar. And so when I heard he was being cast as Loki in Thor, I was really excited. He's an extraordinary presence and an incredible hard worker and an amazing, some of you may know, mimic. If you get the chance for Tom Hiddleston to do an impression, make sure that he does it. In devising his character, one of the things that I really struggled with was how sympathetic he had been in Thor and what a tragic figure he had been. But in speaking with Drew Goddard, resident expert on all things evil, he reminded me that he did throw himself into an abyss and that he has come out the other side of it. And that enabled me to let him play the way Loki is traditionally played, which is for fun. For him to have fun with what he's doing, and for the sadness, the texture that Branagh had brought to the character to lay underneath it. Every now and then his need and his resentment gets the better of his evil, but only occasionally, and Tom was very good at riding that line between truly spectacularly, delightfully evil and believable. It's very easy to go too far in one direction or another.
I come with glad tidings.
All of his spiel about freedom, which he brings up often, and how crippling it is for people, I enjoyed enormously writing, not just because it sounds like funny Elizabethan type talk, but because I really believe that he believes it. It makes perfect sense on some level to say that humanity is not doing a very good job of taking care of themselves, and what they'd really like is for Daddy to make it better. And for him to espouse that so articulately and not understand that the only a person who is deeply damaged would ever want to be the person who takes care of everybody is I think what makes his character so interesting. This particular shot I'd bring up just because it goes from a fairly tight of the case and the stunt to as wide as we could bring it. That was deliberate and done as often as possible because we're shooting the 3D. And 3D for me meant fluid camera movement when I could, very few extreme close-ups. In fact, I'm using a 60 lens on her. That was probably as long as I got for, certainly by that point in the shoot. I also tried to extend that shot as much as possible of her doing her little tuck and roll, because that's actually Kobe. Kobe's very physical, which is always exciting from any actor, particularly when they're female. This tunnel sequence was shot by our second unit in some tunnels where they were growing mushrooms, or they were mushroom tunnels. They used to be, I think, a limestone quarry, and then they were used for mushrooms in Philly, I think. Somewhere even farther away than where I was, and they did about 4 days there. They got some great footage. Ultimately, we had to cut it down a bit, but we needed to have some sort of sense of movement in space, again, for the 3D of the thing. When you're shooting with that in mind, I didn't want to do the, Dr. Terror's House of Pancakes and shove the pancake at the audience every 5 seconds. But what I did want to do was respect the feeling of space, the feeling of the walls and the ceiling, and the sort of epic quality that you get from 3D when it's working. And Stereo D, the conversion house that did it, made it work beautifully. There's not a shot in here that I'm not extremely excited by when I've seen it in 3D. And that's, that technology was so nascent. Even while I was developing the movie, I was watching 3D conversion that was unwatchable. And so the enormous strides they made. made me very happy because I tried to shoot in 3D. I shot the Tag to Thor with the actual 3D rigs. We lost 3.5 hours out of a 12-hour day to equipment. Wasn't even malfunctioning. It just was weird. So that was the end of my trying to shoot 3D and my conversion to conversion, which, as it turns out, can look just as good, if not better. This was kind of a dismal night for us. You'll notice there's a bit of dust in the air. Somehow, when we scouted the sandy desert, where the helicopter was going to be 10 feet off the ground, nobody mentioned that there might be a little bit of dust. And we had shot certain things, Sam's close-ups, elsewhere, and then got to the place, and within seconds, the helicopter rendered everything completely invisible by kicking up so much dust, and we all had a jolly laugh. Oh no, wait. We never had a jolly laugh. That was my mistake. We were just sad. But we managed to find the footage and then add a little something to the rest of it. These three guys talking was part of our very short additional photography, where we tried a couple of different ideas about what to say before the main title, and I finally decided that what to say before the main title was just his face. Now, structurally, we did some juggling, and Kevin was very good at sort of pointing out, well, what if we put this here? What if we put that there? Because we did have to bring together the whole team. And there was a question about, well, who should come first? Who should come second? Should we cut from this character to this character, this country to this country? A lot of it came together in a way that seemed so much like it was absolutely meant to be, that I'm going to tell you all that it was, and that this is the exact order I wrote everything in. This scene in particular was interesting. We found this warehouse that our Russian interpreter and everybody involved said looked so much like actual Russia, which was nice. It's nice for me to have been able to do this scene because I studied Russian literature and Russian language in school, and it's always been fascinating to me. But also, while we were shooting it, Jeremy Latcham, who was the producer on the movie and as invaluable a producer as I will ever work with, he said to me, you know what, and this was late in the shoot, this is the only scene in the script that's exactly the way you wrote it in the first draft. I don't think he meant to depress me, because he's a lovely man, but I became sad. However, there is a reason for it. It is a favorite among people, and it is kind of my career in a microcosm, because ultimately there's a helpless female who turns out to be stronger than everybody around her. I also had written a spec very early in my career that involved a fight with somebody tied to a chair, and was so excited that I could finally use the jump down and smash the chair on the guy gag that I'd thought up long ago. I think it was in another movie in between, and I was too late, but it was still fun to do. That entire area was padded very subtly. They made it look like nice hard concrete floor, and we added lots of Foley to make it sound worse than it was. But actually, all of that floor is gentle padding so that the actors, especially Heidi Moneymaker, Scarlett's extraordinary double, could do what they needed to do when she's bare feet and has no sleeves.
Let me put you on.
Whenever you say she has no sleeves, your stunt coordinator cries man tears, because it's very difficult to do a lot of these things if you can't pad up the knees and elbows. So what they were able to accomplish and what they put together, just so delightful. And Scarlett, so game, so much fun to work with physically. She just, the matching and the energy she brings to it, and that particular move of Heidi's, a fave of everybody's, there's these night shoots, and even though this is an interior, it had to be night because you could actually see outside, and we couldn't really tent off the building. They're deadly if you don't have somebody who's really in it and having fun. And that's Scarlet.
Then you know that Stark trusts me about as far as he can.
That was our little peek at the bridge. I deliberately shot into the wall here just so that we wouldn't actually give away the game, because we knew we weren't going to show the bridge until later in the movie. This, I think, is one of the most beautiful parts. It's Calcutta. It is Albuquerque. This was the same day we shot Albuquerque for World War II, Germany, and the Arctic. And New Jersey, I think. We put everything in there. But the work they did, Victor Zolfo and the people getting all the set deck together, is just extraordinary. If you look at that long Steadicam shot following the girl around, every corner is filled with a bit of reality and a bit of life. And it's very easy when you're playing a foreign country to do something that feels generic or feels Hollywood or feels wrong. And I'm sure that in some cases we did. But when you get really good people sort of getting into the culture and giving you so much texture to work with that's really based on what's there, you're so far ahead of the game. And that's the kind of people I was dealing with.
Should have got paid up front, Banner.
You know, for a man who's supposed to be avoiding stress, you picked
Also, if you look back at that sequence, one of the things that impressed me the most was the light. I commented to Seamus McGarvey, our DP, and an extraordinary gentleman, so talented and so sweet. I asked, I said how much I loved the light, and he very gleefully said, "There's no moonlight." Every light in it was practical, and in that exterior, and it made it feel so much more like the city it was meant to be, and not like a movie where they throw a giant blue moon all over everything. That kind of veracity, while still making beautiful images, which Seamus can't not do. He just makes things pretty. Why, he even made Scarlett Johansson look pretty. How does he do it? I don't know. He's some kind of mad genius. But to bring that texture and truth to it while you're prettying it up is important. It's not just neat. It's important because this is the Marvel Universe. And the Marvel Universe in movies, very similar to the Marvel Universe in comics. I want to point out here, this was a little piece of set deck, that crib. The line, "I don't every time get what I want," was just in the script. I saw that crib and was like, oh, if he touches this while he says it, this line is going to mean something much more. And bless him, Mark went for it. I was afraid he'd say, "No, I'd be standing over here." This was one of our first scenes.
What does Fury want me to do?
And, we were still finding our way, but both of these guys are dreamy to work with. In fact, you're going to hear me say that about the whole cast, so get ready for boredom, because it was an extraordinary group I was working with. And considering, again, this was my sophomore effort, they really came through for me. As I was saying about the Marvel Universe, it's based in reality in a way that other superhero...
Lying to me!
At the time, comics and before Iron Man movies just weren't. And they always had, sort of an arch air to them. And I don't say that as a bad thing. It's a choice. But their choice to base Tony Stark and Iron Man in a kind of grounded reality informs everything that I had to do with the Avengers, as much as any of the other movies, if not more, because you want people to go, "This is happening, this is in our world," while at the same time they're going, "Wow, this is a comic book." And of course, we'll get to the discussion of young Banner and that challenge in a little bit. This was another piece of additional photography for two reasons. One, the council, as they had been shot, were very underwhelming, and that was totally my fault. I wanted them to seem like good, decent people who all just tried to do the right thing, and in fact, what I needed them to be was ominous and unlikable, and also big. They looked rather like they were reporting the weather in my first version. We also reshot it because it came in a different place in the movie, and we had a different amount of exposition, a different kind of exposition to lay out. This movie, the most difficult part, far and away, writing the script. Structurally, getting all the pieces together. And then once we had all the pieces, if we rearranged them slightly, had to see the domino effect of how that would, affect every other scene. And so this was something that we could plug in after we knew exactly where everything was going to go. He says it's won by soldiers because now we're going to Captain America. As you'll see in the deleted scenes, there was a ton of Captain America in the world, feeling out of the world. This, by the way, I refer to as the Barton Fink shot. We did it on day one. It's a shot that I just love, coming up from behind him, and it is one that I never explained to Seamus at all what I wanted the light to be like. And when I saw what he had done, I was like, well, my job just got way easier. And in fact, very seldom did I actually have to give Seamus real direction about what things should look like, because we were very much on the same wavelength, or if we weren't, his wavelength was much prettier than mine. This is a favorite little moment of mine. Not a big laugh, and at the time I worried that I wasn't filming it dynamically enough because it was 3D and it was day one. But just seeing those bags lined up, you know what you need to know. And that's why ultimately we ended up cutting those scenes, because Steve hitting that bag told you pretty much everything you needed to know about his level of isolation and frustration. And I'm a great explainer of things. And in a movie like this, you're going to explain things 5 times because you're never going to be sure when you've said enough. And then you're going to look at it and go, okay, I didn't need these 4. And so it's kind of the nature of the beast that would happen. There are certain things you accept going in that you're going to do a little too much in order to make sure you did enough.
Howard Stark fished that out of the ocean when he was looking for you. He thought what we think. I
miss all the stuff that we took out, but I don't think the film is worse for not having it. I think the texture is all there, and that's something else that I would say is an important part of what working at Marvel means. There are certain things that I was certain were going to come out because they were just little bits of character texture that just pushed our understanding of the character farther. And they never did, even when, we were searching to get time out and to tighten the movie and to make sure it had momentum, because there's so much to say and, it was quite long. They never came at the character stuff. This is an example of what I like to call director's intent, which is, he says, you should have left it in the ocean. We cut to the ocean. Yeah, that's the kind of forward thinking that makes me the great director I am. Or that just happened by accident. It was Kevin who suggested we put this scene last and let Tony be the last intro since he's the rock star. And when we realized that we had the line about the ocean and then the cut to underwater, we all did a giddy dance. And then I swore that I would certainly never mention it on the DVD commentary.
Good to go on this.
This is one of those sequences where, first of all, hello, 3D. We're at some point we got to travel. You got to travel. I mean, I don't like to be obnoxious with the 3D, especially at a running time like this, and especially when we're going to have so much to do. But sometimes you just want to fly through the air, especially when your character can. This whole sequence was early on storyboarded. Actually, it was pre-visualized by the third floor, and they did a lot of the movie in pre-viz and post-viz. Once we'd shot something, they would then add a sort of mock-up of what the effects would look like, since we literally didn't drop some of them in until under a week before we delivered the film. It takes that long. So this whole sequence of coming in here was storyboarded and pre-vized and ready to go before I had written the script, which sounds a little bass-ackwards, but was going in part of the drill. We had 2 years from the time I took the job till the movie had to come out, which is not enough years.
Directly involved. Which brings me to my next question. How does it feel?
And we were starting from scratch, so we had to, get some things going before I'd even put the script in. We knew that we were sure we're going to be in the movie. Occasionally we storyboarded things we were sure were going to be in the movie that would never even made it to the second draft, but you have to take that chance. You'll notice in the frame there's a Gwyneth. Always put a Gwyneth in the frame. This is one of the first rules of directing. Mitchell Leisen years ago, and he didn't even know what a Gwyneth was. He was the first who said it, I think. But it makes things elegant. It makes them interesting. It makes them human. It makes them funny. And it was Robert who insisted that she be in the film. He wanted very much, rather than being sort of eccentric loner or tortured or any number of things that he had already done. He wanted to progress from where they had been in their relationship in the first two movies, and for her to be a part of this, to give texture and life and Gwynethosity to the whole thing. And it was a beautiful instinct, and one of the most fun things I did, not just shooting it, but working with Robert on their relationship and what they would be talking about, and the kind of the back and forth between them. Ultimately, it was my chance to write 3 minutes of The Thin Man, and I had a great time, although I was very nervous when she showed up, because for some reason I thought she would notice that I am a big pony who doesn't know what he's doing. But if she noticed it, she never mentioned it, which was very sweet.
The Avengers initiative was scrapped. I thought, and I didn't even...
Other people might have said something.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, apparently I'm volatile, self-obsessed.
If I start talking about Clark Gregg, you might hear me choke up. What a prince! What a prince this guy is, and the number of great reaction shots he has in this movie are, of him trying not to react her. Well, it's pretty priceless.
Still pretty shaken.
How would you know this? Why is he filled?
What is all this?
To have these three with their history
This.
going back and forth is it's a gift. A lot of people asked about, well, how do you deal with all the restrictions based on, what came before in the movies before? And the fact of the matter is, sometimes it could be very, very difficult. And sometimes it made my life lots easier. Not that you would have had to see those movies, but it doesn't hurt if you have, and the ease that these three have. Here comes the reaction shot. Wait for it. There you go. That they have with each other, based on that history, is palpable, and the fun that they have is palpable. You'll always hear people say, we had so much fun making the movie. Now, I tend not to have fun when I'm making a movie because I don't have time. Fun is something other people can have while I'm working, but I do enjoy the work, and when the people enjoy each other and you hear people say, we had so much fun making it, it usually has no bearing on the film itself. Usually that doesn't mean the film is any good. In this case, I do think, because this was such a Brobdingnagian effort, it was so gargantuan, and it took so much focus and concentration and so many bits and pieces. The fact that these guys all had a great time doing it and came to play and really invested themselves in it, it did make a difference. It shows up on screen. There's an energy, a palpable energy that comes off these guys. It's different from every one of them, which is what makes it exciting. It's what makes it the Avengers.
I sort of met you. I mean, I watched you.
This, by the way, this little through line with Clark, this is the gift that keeps on giving. My original problem was that everybody had a dry wit. And I had so much dry wit in the movie that it was like a desert of wit. And I needed to play up some change, and I happened on the idea that Coulson might have a bit of a fanboy thing with Steve Rogers, which turned out to be, it unfolds throughout the movie. It just gets better and better. It's got the cards, and they lead us on a merry chase as a through line, and all of that came from just trying to solve one problem. And, that's one of the great things about this process, the organic nature of it, and the scope of it is that when you're trying to solve one problem, every now and then, basically you create an avalanche and you just watch it roll down your movie and just cover it with beautiful snow. And it is a gift. I mean, you feel like somebody gave you a present, because it's not like, I figured out this cool thing. It just kept working. And now we're here.
I will lead them in the glory.
Underneath all that gack is Alexis Denisov, who's one of my best friends and truest players, who very graciously came out for a day and covered himself in muck so that he could disguise his voice and not be recognizable to any living soul. But I love what he does with this guy. The Other, we called him. He has no other name. And, what we had here was, 8 square feet of bumpy stage that looked not unlike Star Trek, the original series. And again, Digital Domain in this case really livened it up. You can see in the staircase that goes on with the stairs unattached, a little influence from Jim Starlin. Jim Starlin wrote and drew a couple of the most important Avenger arcs for me, particularly the Avengers annual that was followed by the Thing 2-in-1 annual that contained the death of Adam Warlock and was, of course, a story about Thanos and his love of death. For me, those were the seminal Avengers stories.
There will be no realm.
They, I think, upped the game visually and textually in a grown-up fashion before Byrne and Claremont's X-Men. I think they're very underrated. And they really opened up my understanding of what you could do with a comic book. And so that influence, both visually and story-wise, is going to stay with me. The Carrier. We're lucky enough to be allowed to film on an aircraft carrier. And when I say aircraft carrier, I mean a runway in the desert that was so hot that my sneakers melted onto the tarmac. And it was a nightmare. Everybody was just baking. And the fact that you can kind of feel the chilly air around them is a testament to our good friends at ILM, who had the bulk of the work here. Very few houses that didn't work on this movie. ILM doing the biggest work, and Whedon after them, both working on the carrier. One of the behind banner there, that's one of the 2 actual planes that we managed to get. We didn't have any Army involvement since there is no real Army story in this. So we had to get private planes and put them wherever we could. The Quinjet, obviously, is digital. There are many things in this movie that are digital that do not appear to be. There are some things, in fact, that we looked at and crowed about, and only later were told by Yannick Sears, the evil head of VFX, that they were digital, that he had replaced what we had shot with something digital and hadn't told us. That's evil. In early versions of the script, we had the carrier. We didn't have the takeoff. And once we decided to put it in, it was one of those things where we could not believe we would ever have been stupid enough not to have it. Because the only buy into this world is through ours. And the only buy into the idea that thing should fly is to see it for what it should be, an aircraft carrier, and then put it in the air, and to have that moment of the takeoff. It's very exultant. It's gorgeously done digitally. And then, of course, we have the bridge. James Chinland, our production designer, not making ugly things. And this was one of our most epic sets. You find in a film like this, where we shot for over 90 days, that you have little filmlets. We shot here for 3 weeks, and that was our whole world. And it is beautiful, and it is epic, and by the end of the 3rd week, I couldn't wait to get off it. So tired of it. It's really slippery. The whole place is really slippery. So, just all of those extras deserve extra credit for not falling on their faces in every shot. And plus, somebody would come in and clean it at night and make it more slippery. Why would they do that? Why couldn't it be sticky? The retroflexion panels. We didn't know if we were going to pull that one off, but there was a lot of talk about, well, maybe we could have the carrier create its own bank of clouds, but then it wouldn't appear to be flying through the air. It would appear to be squatting on a bank of clouds and would lose its epic quality. But it's enormous, and anybody would be able to see it. So we went with the retroreflection concept and hoped that nobody would accuse us of being sort of decadent Pierce Brosnan end of his era with Bond. Because we, again, trying for a skosh of reality. You'll also hear a lot of science in this film. This was brought to us by real scienticians. Mostly with Jeremy Latcham going on the internet and looking things up that sounded like science, because I don't know anything. And because by the time we were writing some of these scenes, we were already filming. It was the nature of the beast with this schedule and my inability to get things right the first time that we would be writing while we were shooting, while we were editing. Luckily, if you ever run a television show, you do all those things at once, and it wasn't exactly a sea change for me. But every now and then it would come and bite us. But again, Jeremy Latcham always there with the save and the science. You'll notice their eyes are funktastic. That's something we did very late in the game in post. We decided that the through line was not clear enough, that these guys were possessed, especially since later on they would become unpossessed. So we went in and digitally messed up their eyeballs. They're not wearing contacts. And in fact, I don't even think the actors knew we were doing that to them until they saw the movie. And, we didn't actually know we were doing to them until a couple of months before they saw the movie. It was one of the last things we did.
It's a vintage set.
This is, again, the second bit of the Coles run. Incredibly important to me. The fact that I got the term slight foxing around the edges into this movie is one of those wins, like the shot of the mirror in Russia and certain other things that you just think, there's no way this is going to survive. There's no way they're going to let this much of me in there. But I like to collect like Victorian children's novels, and I'd read catalogs, and that's where I learned the term slight foxing, when things are slightly brown around the edges. And I just love the idea that he's a true collector. That makes me happy. Classical music makes me happy. Schubert, didn't see it coming. We were looking for a piece that would be elegant with a slight ominous undertone and romantic. And, I always think of Schubert as Mr. Treacle, but it's a beautiful piece. And the fact that they let this stand as it was, there's Captain America's Ready Room. It's beautiful. That design by Ryan Meinerding of the room, which reminds me so much of the work of John Cassaday. And so perfectly realized by the peeps, to have that Schubert playing over what is such an iconic Cap moment is again a real win. And I have to say, this was a courthouse in Cleveland that I probably was happier here than any place else. It really reminded me of the Met. When I was a kid, my mom gave me a membership to the Metropolitan Museum of Art for Christmas, and I used to wander through it all the time. And just that feeling of elegance and marble. I like to think that Loki and I conspired in making one scene from The Age of Innocence and putting it in the Avengers. Of course, it's the scene in The Age of Innocence where Daniel Day-Lewis carves out somebody's eyeball. I think they cut that from the final film, but we decided that we weren't afraid to do that. I'm not a coward like that Scorsese. No, sir. Iridium, phlebotinum, MacGuffinum. The idea of having Loki come out and do his Loki thing was always there, but the idea of having him actually accomplish something, that is getting the eyeball print for Hawkeye, came later. That came from Jed and Marissa, my brother Jed Whedon and Marissa Tantrum, who did some work uncredited on the film, putting things together and dropping in some bits.
I said.
That car, by the way it stays on its nose, one of my favorite things. It stayed on its nose and then fell back onto its wheels. It was an accident. It didn't flip over all the way, but it went like 30 feet just on its nose. Then we did a second take where it flipped over, and then we combined them. That just made me really happy. This we referred to as the wheat field. Again, it was designed for the 3D scope of it. And it's something that I described to Kevin Feige very early in the process, and we were always trying to protect. For a while, we thought we were going to film in Detroit, and there was a beautiful interior there of an opera house. And so the idea became that he was going to see, the Ring cycle, which is actually about, it has Loki and Thor and Odin as characters, which I thought would be hilarious. But then it morphed to this.
Not to men like you.
Some people did find this a little ham-handed, and I understand that. I liked the idea of a guy in Germany who had a sense of history to him. This was originally in because
Let him be an example.
the movie had a lot more to do with Cap's sort of reemergence in the world, and for him to go to Germany was particularly personal. Ultimately, because that stuff got dialed back a little bit in the movie, this stood out to some people as well. Seeing German people kneel, we've seen that, and it's saying that they're like sheep. That's terrible. But the idea was of somebody standing up to him. Of course, when I got to the line last time, I saw somebody in Germany standing above everybody else, and Cap is actually standing above everybody else. I realized that I had created a problem for myself, and that's why you'll see people in the background there standing up while he's saying it, so that he cannot be an enormous hypocrite. Because, of course, what he's saying, Loki, is, no, you're not better than other people. You're not larger than life. But he's a super soldier. He's a superhero. This is a movie about people who are larger than life. And for him to be the man of the people, you got to walk that line too. Tony Stark, not a man of the people. He's a man of Tony Stark. And God bless him. He's definitely a hero. Definitely likes to help people, but it's his world. We're all just living in it. I mean, let's face it. If this is a Rat Pack movie, he ain't Joey Bishop.
Stark? Captain?
This scene contains one of the few things that, rather doesn't contain one of the few things that I was a little sorry to lose, which there was an exchange between Tony and Steve, a very short one, about Howard Stark, Tony's father, who was established as a friend of Steve's in the first Cap movie. Ultimately, we had one throwaway line on the carrier, and it was probably what I had written was probably a little harsh. I still maintained that Tony's got some father issues. I know that he found out his father loved him in the second film, but I couldn't help but think that when you're in your 40s, it doesn't count. It really has to happen when you're little. Otherwise, you're still twisted. And speaking of entrances, we weren't, but now we are. There are some things that you got to do, and people may question the logic of them. Nobody ever questioned the logic of Thor landing on top of the Quinjet. They did say how, with the Bifrost gone, did he get to Earth? But nobody said, how did he find the Quinjet? Everybody said, oh, he's going to fly through the air and land on top of the Quinjet? Good idea, because look at him. He's Chris Hemsworth. He's just Thor. And because he comes so late in the film, he's the last man in.
I have a plan. Attack.
I wanted to make sure that his entrance was as dramatic as possible.
I'd sit this one out, Cap.
I don't see how I can.
These guys.
Some people were also surprised about Cap's line here, me being an avowed atheist. But I may be, but Steve Rogers isn't, and I definitely think his reaction to this new world feels very real. Whedon created the landscape surrounding these guys, we had an interior. I was adamant that we were going to shoot outside on an actual mountaintop, but to find one, well, that looks as cool as this, and to shoot on it in what would be enormous winds, because when you stand on top of a mountain, there's a lot of wind, that was naive on my part, because I wanted, I did not want to dub these guys. And because this is a very intimate scene, however much grandeur there may be in the setting, it is just two brothers.
We played together.
First time Hemsworth and I sat down to talk about this, we laughed and laughed. And then when we were done with that, he said, I'd like to not have the father issues, if that's all very well with you. I've done that. I'm interested in, the brother stuff.
Love is recompense for your imagined slights. No.
And his relationship with both Loki and with Tom is so much fun. They're very different in the way that they work, the way they come at a scene, and yet they complement each other enormously. There was a great moment here where Tom started one of his lines. I remember a shadow growing up in the shade of your great... Oh, sorry. No, wait. I caught myself acting. Can we go again? It's one of my favorite moments. Tom will always try to be his own bullshit meter because, again, he's got to be so big that he's got to make sure it doesn't go too far.
Who controls the would-be king? I am a king, not here!
These guys who are so different work on exactly the same level. And that's, a triumph for both of them.
Come home.
I tried for a long time to get another villain into this film because I thought, Loki can't possibly carry us through the entire thing himself. And, more fool me. Because he does, both with power and wit. All right, that was a cheap joke. Okay, I admit it. And I'm going to do it again like 4 times in the movie, and I'm just going to apologize up front. I like knocking Norse people out of frame. It makes me laugh.
You have no idea what you're dealing with.
Shakespeare in the Park?
And I like things that make me laugh. This, Shakespeare in the Park, I threw that to Robert on the day, and then he improv'd the line about the drapes, which is, part of his great energy comes from the fact that we would be, shaking it up right before we went almost every time. And so when it felt fresh, it was because, generally speaking, it was. Although Robert can also read something that he learned a year ago and make it sound like he just thought of it. He has very immediate energy. Now, this sequence was all shot practically. There is no digital work of any kind. This really happened. In fact, it's a documentary. This was boarded right up front because ultimately we knew we wanted them to fight on a mountaintop. Having Iron Man and Thor conflict was one of the first things Marvel said they wanted. And the storyboard guys, Brian and the gang, they came up with just wonderful stuff, some of which apparently they'd been pitching since the first Iron Man movie, but it was so good, we ended up doing it shot for shot. They did a lot of the work here, and it's beautiful work. And Whedon kept plussing the headbutt gag. This shot from below, that was on a 3x5 index card. When you get the storyboard guys really giving you specific gags, this, come on. He headbutts a metal guy, and if you look carefully here, there's the dent in his head. Oh my God, come on. That's really cool. I love to create fights, but my job here, I brought some stuff to it, but my job wasn't so much to create it. My job was to justify it. Because they knew they wanted them to fight, and there was some talk about, well, he could be under a spell, or he could think he's a bad guy, or he could, and to me that was deadly. That was danger, because if you get these guys pummeling each other out of a misapprehension, then you're just waiting for them to start talking. You're just checking a box. Iron Man fights Thor. Done. Okay, check. And you don't want that. What you want are two people with conflicting agendas, and a Norse guy who's kind of losing it. And so, what I ultimately came up with has been done in many cop movies. You can't bust the bad guy because he's part of a bigger investigation kind of thing. But it gave each of them a legitimate excuse to believe they should have Loki. The other guy should stand down and for their tempers to get the better of them, so that what you have is not just a fight, you have a conflict. It's not a genius conflict, but it's enough of one that you're feeling what's going on and you're not just watching it. I love hallways. I'm just going to say it. I asked for as many hallways as I could get. I love them not just for the 3D, that sense of space, but just moving through space for me is a very visceral experience. And you don't get, unfortunately, in a situation like this where you're making this giant movie with all these moving parts, you don't get to do long takes where you just let things unfold. You sort of have to create the scene to an extent in the editing room. I have very specific intent with my camera work, but at the same time, you know that sometimes that intent is going to be subverted later on, or you'll use something for something else. And so any chance that I get to create specificity of place, and in particular movement through space, hallways and whatnot, I will do it because it feels present in a way that other things don't. That's why I tend not to use long lenses, which when you're shooting combat, you do want to use long lenses, and sometimes we threw some in so you'd get the veracity of the fight towards the end. But when you're shooting people, I like to feel the room that they're in, so I'm in it with them. And when you're shooting 3D, the longer the lens, the flatter the person, it starts to look odd. So 3D actually sort of helped me in that sense. It worked for my own aesthetic. This room with the cell is one of the most gorgeous sets we had. The cell could be removed. Later on, it drops out, and then we have a scene without it in there. And Thor goes tumbling about in it. There is, however, one thing about the cell that I don't quite understand. Two things, actually. One, right where he's standing and tilting his head back, which he's doing to find his light, because we discussed it earlier, that's the exact center of the cell. And if you stand in the exact center, your voice echoes in the most insane way. The mic doesn't pick it up. You have to be there. But it's like being in a cathedral. It's absolutely absurd. The other thing is that cell, not the set, just the cell, weighs 18 tons. I don't know why. I think it's made out of vibranium or something, or, the hopes and dreams of a nation. It's the heaviest thing in the world. And trying to tilt it was one of the saddest experiences of the film. That was one of the longest days we had. That thing weighs a lot. But, it needs to, because it's holding an entire person. So that makes perfect sense to me.
So he's building another portal. That's what he needs, Eric.
So this is
He's an
an enormous amount of exposition around an enormous table. The enormity of the table is problematic in that it makes dynamic camera work and angles kind of hard to come by. So you're pretty much just standing far away from the actor and pointing the camera at them, which ultimately is not the most engaging. But it's also an opportunity.
I think it's about the mechanics. Iridium, what do they need the iridium?
It's an opportunity to make jokes, and through jokes, learn about character. And there is a specificity into what's going on here, particularly with Tony. Everybody else is standing around the big boring table. It's not a boring table. It's a beautiful table, but it's boring to stand around it. And here comes Tony, and the first thing he does is get in Thor's space, get in her space, stand in Fury's space. We go to the place where the leader is and pretend to be him. And then come around past Cap and to Banner. And all of that is very deliberate. Tony, this is his sort of intro to the group, and he's creating motion very deliberately. He's getting in everyone's space very deliberately. He's making fun of everything very deliberately. He's also planting a bug or a computer virusy machine thing that would cause science to happen. Anyway, the point is he also reveals that he's brilliant, and
kind of power source.
So visually, he's actually doing something to complement who he is in the movie, which is, you know,
Figured out how to stabilize the quantum.
he comes in and it's his world. And that was not by accident. Small note about what came before. The line about being able to smell crazy on Loki was actually leading to something we shot and had to ditch for financial reasons, which was that Loki did multiple Lokis at the Hulk in Stark Tower, and the Hulk took a sniff and then hit the real one because the fake ones didn't smell like anything. So we were setting that up, and we took it out, but the setup stayed in since it's still a nice line, and we wanted to establish a little bit of a frisson between Loki and Banner, although they didn't get to have a scene together. That moment, Chris was a little worried about. He felt that it might make Cap seem like a dolt, but in fact, he loved watching people react to it because it makes him so sympathetic. And that, the Gallagher joke, was added after the fact because that extra just looked shifty. So we hadn't actually intended that on the day we saw the second unit footage of that guy turning back to his console. We thought, let's see what happens. Captain America is standing on that little platform to the right there. He was digitally removed, and they had him enter later in the scene. The fact that they could do that so seamlessly is terrifying to me, but also very useful.
When I was in New York, I kind of broke Harlem.
Well, I promise to stress-free environment, no tension, no surprises.
One of the first things Robert said
Nothing?
when we were meeting
Sure, Sal.
about the movie was, there's no way Tony Stark gets in a room with Bruce Banner and doesn't poke him.
Everything a joke to you?
There's no way. He wants to see it happen. He wants to see how that guy works. And that not only is true, not only ended up in the movie, but ultimately informs their entire arc, which is one of my favorite things in the movie. The idea that Tony Stark is not intimidated by the concept of the Hulk, and in fact thinks that Bruce needs to embrace his inner Hulk, as 'twere. Sounds like pure classic Tony irresponsibility, and in fact it is, what saves us all, and ultimately what saves Tony, because he allows Bruce to he sets him up and lets him get to that place where he can decide to be the Hulk. And you have two different Hulks in this movie. You have the one that he becomes unwittingly, and the one that he decides to be. And the difference is palpable.
That building will run itself for what, a year?
The Hulk is, and Banner himself, probably the hardest job on this film. I wanted Mark for the role.
What are they doing in the energy business in the first place?
I should probably...
And nobody else. And was very
breaking into all of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s...
delightfully surprised to find that not only did Marvel agree with me, but they had actually been considering him for it. The last time they did a Hulk movie, they loved him. And what I love about him, I've been watching Shelter Island a lot on the old iPad, and was just obsessed with how open he is. That everyman quality that lets you in, that doesn't close you off ever. You go on his journey with him, and that ease and that naturalism and that engagement are something that I desperately wanted to capture. I didn't think Marvel would go for it because he doesn't look like a skinny scientist. He actually looks like a Hulk. He looks like a guy who can take care of himself. Get ready for Chris Evans' jaw. Greatest jaw in the film. Get ready. Here it comes. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. That's a hero.
That's the guy my dad knows.
I don't have that jaw. So I don't wear the star. Don't have the jaw. Mark and I spent a lot of time from the first day we met talking about rage, talking about the humiliation of it, talking about the inability to control it, talking about how we incorporate it into our lives. And, we even did some wrestling, on a mat. And he did a ton of mocap where we also tackled each other a bunch, just trying to figure out the physicality of somebody who's so angry. And we both agreed about a lot of things, one of which
Not just armor.
I would also stop to mention Terrible Privilege. That was
Because I love you.
Robert's edition, and I really like that.
All about your
But
past.
these two
That might be
enjoyed
better.
each other so much, and it shows. But
Sorry to say.
what we tried to get at was a Banner who
Saved my life.
did not feel sorry for himself, even though he's in a lot of pain.
Saved it for
He's helping other people. We went with the Bixby model. We went with the show. We went with this guy has internalized a problem enough so that he can just go about helping other people and not trying to cure himself every second. And that idea of how he would make that work, again, became a central through line that's paid off right before he becomes the Hulk for the second time. And it speaks to a very human truth. We all have these reservoirs of anger, and how do we deal with them? Do we deny them so that they flare up, or do we incorporate them so that they into our being in an even fashion, so that they are present but not prominent? It's that kind of the mixture of bumblingness and grace that Mark brought to the character is informed by that desire not to bump into anything, not to get near conflict, but the confidence he has from having incorporated it is also palpable. Which is funny because Mark himself, not so much with the confidence, every day for the first week came up to me at the end of the shooting day and just said, "Not too late to recast." But bless him, the amazing work he was doing. This was, necessary, obviously. Coulson, of course, getting a bit with everybody that he's met in the other films, so that when, should anything bad happen to him, we'll know that everybody is mourning for him. Not that anything bad would happen, unless, of course, Kevin Feige insisted upon it in the very first meeting, which I am never going to say enough times. Greedo shot first. Han shot first, and Kevin killed Coulson. Because I told him from the first meeting, you know how much guff I'm going to get for this. I have a reputation for killing off beloved characters. But in fact, I ended up not getting much guff for it, because people knew that it was an important story element.
In my youth, I courted war.
War hasn't started yet.
That line of Chris's, "In my youth I courted war," used to be the first half of another line. And then we cut out the second part on the day, and it just sort of hung there and became one of my favorite lines.
A lot of guys think that till the pain starts.
He just brings so much to it.
What are you asking me to do?
It's an odd thing for him to say out loud, and therefore I find it really lovely.
And why do I feel like he's the only person on this boat that wants to be?
And of course, it's not a superhero movie if they're not talking about torturing a prisoner. Oh, wait, actually, I guess that's kind of rare. But that was, a chance for Sam Jackson's Nick Fury character to be, as morally ambiguous as we wanted him to be. We always wanted him to be pushing the boundaries of what is right, so that we could believe he might do something truly terrible. And in fact, he is lying and manipulating everybody. Not unlike this fella. They're also both very tall. Loki has more eyes than Nick Fury. But apart from that, they're very similar.
And once you've won,
This is
the mountain,
probably my favorite scene.
what happens?
And of course, it's just two people talking, but it is a power struggle. And it's a power struggle that contains, a great deal of flopping who's ahead and who's behind. And it was enormous fun to write, and the two of them really sunk their teeth into it. And I had that extraordinary cell to shoot with its extraordinary reflective capabilities. So
I didn't care where you started.
it wasn't actually
Or
particularly easy, because we couldn't move the cell, which meant I had to shoot through it the entire time, which is why you can see these reflections
kill me.
in front of them. I couldn't actually shoot a close-up on her unless I shot through the cell. I could get in the cell and shoot him, but that became ultimately, I think, kind of a virtue, the separation between them.
World in the balance, and you bargained for one man.
Regimes fall every day. I tend not to weep over that. I'm Russian. Or I was.
And what are you now?
It's really not that complicated. I got red in my ledger. I'd like to wipe it out.
That line again, red in my ledger, that's something else that, at the time, not designed to be a callback, but it lent itself perfectly. And that's the thing about a movie of this scope, again, that lets you do a little bit more with all these characters. The fact that she plays him
Barton told me everything.
and pretends that everything he's saying is affecting her in this, my favorite shot in the whole movie, because of the scary Loki god of guilt coming at her.
This is a child at prayer. You lie and kill.
The fact that we later find that even though she was playing him, it did actually affect her. It just adds one more layer of texture. His little speech about all of these people and these 3 cutaways, I actually inserted into the scene before we shot it, but after I had written it. And it originally started with the other 2. It started with Shield and then went to Banner, or the other way around, and we flopped things about. But I basically added a little intercut of everybody just to keep everything alive, because I had a lot of people talking, and talking in sometimes just extremely unpleasant Elizabethan language, which I know there's been some back and forth about whether it's a good thing or not. But all I can say is it felt right for Loki. It felt like Asgard was not necessarily an unsexist world, and that this guy would not take her as seriously as he ought. And for him to be truly, brutally ugly in his language, to reveal himself like that, and for that to be the moment that she gets the upper hand on him, to me, that's delightful.
What are you doing, Mr. Stark?
Kind of been wondering the same thing about you.
You're supposed to be locating the Tesseract.
We are. The model's locked, and we're sweeping for the signature now. When we hit a hit, we'll have the location.
This was the
within half
scene
a mile.
this week
Get your cue back
of
from
shooting
us.
this
No fuss.
the lab stuff where everybody and their mother shows up to argue.
Phase 2 is Shield.
I told myself that if I could make it through this week, nothing could kill me. I was so raw. But I did make it through, despite the fact that there was an enormous amount of
You want to think about removing yourself from this environment?
staging to do without an enormous amount of moving.
And you've been doing what exactly?
There wasn't that much that we could really play with, but at the same time we had to keep things going and keep it lively and keep everybody in, working. And we had some intense stuff, particularly for Mark, who has to talk about an attempted suicide.
Who had a grudge match that leveled a small town.
To play all of those things and still have time for the actors to find what they need, it's not simple. It was dicey, and I was pretty nervous about it. And as it turned out,
And you're not the only threat.
it really couldn't have gone more smoothly. Everybody was so on point. Everybody was so cooperative. Everybody was so feeding off of everybody else's energy. This is when I knew I really actually had a team, even though it's the scene where they're supposed to be the least like a team. This is where they really came through for each other. This shot
Because that always calms everything right down.
bounces around and then back and around, basically to get us into this next shot without the vernaculars seeming out of nowhere. The idea is that things are getting loopier and loopier. The scepter is affecting all of them. They're getting more and more unreasonable, even though everything they're saying is very much in character. The conflicts they're having are real. And then we see, of course, oh, that's right, there's an evil scepter that turns people bad looming, and then we should go upside down. Now, on the day, I assumed we were going to have to do this digitally, and the camera crew actually said, no, we think we can pull this one off. And it didn't actually take that many takes for them to do it. I did have a few actors see a rough cut of the movie and go, oh, we thought that you'd gone insane. And bless them, they never said it while we were shooting. They just went with it. I'm like, camera's going to come over here. You got to move here. You go there. You got to step over there, and then it's going to go upside down. They're like, okay, great. That sounds totally normal. Anybody would do that.
You need to step.
Like that kind of trust for, what is a difficult and bizarre move, is much appreciated, especially when you find out that secretly they were thinking, he's gone bananas. Nobody's driving. We're going to die.
Playboy philanthropist.
I went very long lens and kind of high up
I've seen the footage.
for these bits because I really wanted to put these guys in their own world. As I said, I don't do that much. But conflict between them is so the two of them socked into each other and things are getting so funky. I didn't want to be overwrought with this sort of weirdo dreamlike funk aspect of it. I just wanted to, push it just enough. But this isn't the vernacular of most of the film, and it's very much on purpose. These guys are just completely in each other's faces. Probably one of the things I can never see too many times is Jeremy looking one way and shooting another. It just makes him so badass. And he does it with such precision.
You people are so petty.
It is very charming.
Yeah, this is a team.
Agent Romanoff.
And once again, playing a little bit with the reality of the thing. This scene was enormously tough, not just to write, and shoot, but to edit. Because we basically have 3 different scenes going on. And these guys stop to have their argument, Tony and Steve, and then, and here's a monologue from Bruce. It's to get from one to the other and to make it flow. I will need to talk about my editors, and I will. This scene belonged to Jeff Ford, but I also need to talk about Alan Silvestri, who also came in, and so much of the movie that seemed like it might be jarring or might not go from one bit to another, Alan made into this mellifluous and seemingly inevitable piece of footage, and that was a great thing to watch.
You're not going alone. You gonna stop me?
I always like it when somebody else makes up for my weaknesses. That makes it appear as though I don't have any. Jeff Ford came up with the idea of cutting back to Loki and having him push the button to make the arrow explode so that we could time this thing out correctly. And this whole carrier attack. Some work here by a lot of people were there's a lot of footsteps in the sand and none of them are mine is what I'm trying to say. No, I did direct the thing. But Jed Marissa helped put this thing together, and then after we shot it, Jeff Ford helped put it together, and then put it together, and then put it together, and then put it together because there are so many elements. And again, working 2 different effects, because we're going to have a scene with Loki and Thor that's actually quite slow, and then we have this, monster movie going on at the same time. We have all these different, not just, scenes, but quite frankly, genres and tempos, and to make all of that stuff come together is, particularly when I myself had so many other things going on and couldn't really finesse it, to know that every time I came back, the editors would have something for me that would be a giant step forward or a great new idea. Enormously grateful. And that applies to the entire film.
Bruce.
This bit right here is the first thing Jeff cut when he came on the movie, and honestly, there's probably not a frame of it changed. He just, and this wasn't one where I had exact intent. I shot the transformation with different cameras and for different bits, and the timing of when he goes where and what he shows is really just intuitive. Obviously, the other editor on the film, who mostly worked in the first half, Lisa Lassick, she came on while we were at Albuquerque, while Jeff was still working on Captain America and, saved me as she so often has. She understood in a way that honestly nobody else did exactly what movie I was trying to make. And that's not just because we've worked together for years, but because she knows this comic book world and the science fiction world and the way the two mesh, and the humor and the rhythm of the thing, in a way that I hadn't been able to communicate to anybody else. And so between the two of them, they elevated this movie enormously.
Bring the carrier back to a 180 heading south. Take us to the water.
Flying blind. Navigation's recalibrating after the engine failure.
Is the sun coming up?
Yes, sir.
Because at some point,
On the left.
you're always in danger of somebody saying, why did they build this thing if it could fall down so easily? So you have to ride that line and make it all seem, like it could be happening. But like they're not the most irresponsible people in the world. And we kept going back and forth on whether or not planes would be falling off the side of the thing. And I eventually was just like, I think that people would die. You can only have so many metal things drop off the side of the carrier before somebody who, has thrown away their lawn darts is suddenly bisected on their back lawn, and then the Avengers are bad people. So be careful with that.
What's it look like in there?
It seems to run on some form of electricity.
Well, you're not wrong.
This was very important to me structurally. Some of my favorite footage, too, because it's very dark and noir. But the whole idea of the first Hulk out is that it's around somebody we love who the Hulk does not love. Sorry, whom the Hulk does not love. And whom he might actually kill. And that's incredibly important because, I think the problem with the Hulk movies was that you were just waiting for the guy, and then a bunch of bullies would show up, and you'd be, yay, a bunch of bullies are there, and so it's time for him to show them that he's cool. But the Hulk story really isn't just a hero story. It is a werewolf story. It's a monster movie. And so it was important to me that the first time he Hulk out, it be around one of our main characters who would be in the most possible danger, the physically weakest of the characters, so that we would not necessarily wish that he would be the Hulk, although with every fiber of our being, we've been waiting to see this guy. And the work that ILM did on the Hulk is extraordinary. It was really, really difficult. They had the motion capture and performance capture from Mark done before the movie, during the movie, and after the movie. But they needed more than that. They needed to go to a comic book place. And I had a really great time. I went up to ILM with Mark, and the two of us spent a day going through every scene. This was after the film. And then at dinner, I told Mark I was spending an extra day there to talk to the animators about, the non-Mark portion of it, about taking it further. Because if you just animate somebody's action, you get something like American Pop. You get something that just doesn't work. You need that extra. Sorry, but that's just cool. That, by the way, is the jet from True Lies, which was sitting in the desert, and we got that one cheap. That extra sort of element that is inhuman, the mouth that opens too wide, the arms that go too far, that comic book basically of it. I got to spend a day talking to them about, and Mark, upon hearing that I was going to do that, wrote them a letter, this beautiful letter saying, we are all playing this part, and I have taken it as far as I can, and you guys have to use what you can and then forget about me and become the Hulk. And it was incredibly inspiring to the animators. And then I got to talk to them for a couple of hours about, the intention, about the idea of the two different Hulks, and everything we were trying to do, and the kind of things that were working and the things that weren't working. And what I found out later was that not only were they not used to having a director explain things in that way. Most of them, in fact, all of them, had not been able to see the script. So they were just animating things in a vacuum. And I hadn't known that. So it was incredibly productive. And when right after that session is when they came up with my personal favorite shot of the Hulk, which is coming up right about now, when he's being shot at, where you really feel both the humanity and the comic book, the reality of the thing. That shot, just beautiful. And, every bit of the Hulk, had to be delivered a month before we finished shooting, and then was inevitably the last stuff to be finished, because to get the humanity and the humor and the framing and what's making him angry at this moment, to get all of that stuff is incredibly difficult. It took a long time to figure it out as a writer, as a director, and then with the animators, and I'm extremely excited by how it paid off. This fight was a bit of a turning point just for me and Chris. We both agreed at one point that what we were doing started to feel like, I think he put it like a bar fight. He was just socking guys, and he, as he said, I think I'm pretty sure I'm a super soldier, and if I hit a guy, he tends to stay down. And, with all of these characters trying to get the specificity of the action and their powers, it's a virus arrow. That could totally happen. Don't make fun of me. But getting the right amount of strength and power and agility and what they can and can't do, and, keeping them in peril, but also making sure their abilities are superhuman. That's tough stuff to track. And after this, I went back in to the script and wrote out, all of the Cap's gags very specifically, and went back in with our stunt guys, Ari Rondell and Johnny Cedro, both of whom are incredibly talented, and just said, okay, we need to cap this up and make sure that he's not at Thor level, but he's not at Hawkeye level. He's in between. He's something else. And that applied to all the characters, making sure that every gag was right for them, was at their power level, because you want everybody to have a compelling story, while they're all working on very different levels. A Hulk-Thor fight is going to be very different than a Widow Hawkeye fight, but not necessarily more compelling, because first of all, a Hawkeye-Widow fight is actually going to be two people fighting, and not just Chris Hemsworth fighting a big foam arm. And the style is different, and the stakes are always the same. The stakes are, you could die. The big pipes with the readouts, they were added. This was a DHL plant that was out of use, and made for good sort of nether spaces on the carrier, especially with those just added bits. Chinland, production designer, again, really good with locations, with bringing just enough to a location to make you feel like you're somewhere else. This is one of those things where, again, I credit everybody involved, particularly the editors, and just in terms of, we're really taking a pause here. And you may have noticed that the helicarrier is plummeting towards the Earth, and there's a lot going on. And yet we have to pause to give respect to this act.
You want to find out?
You can't rush. And we did, compared to how we shot it. It was even slower, but you can't rush right through it when you've done something that matters as much as that. the 3D of it, that plummeting through the clouds, that's Whedon, and that may be one of my favorite shots. This also, second unit, they did a really great job. This was, we had done the first part, and that's when Jeremy threw his neck out. Not actually doing anything in particular, he just took a wrong turn and twinge, and he could hardly move. So Scarlett rearranged her schedule so the two of them could come back together after we moved on to finish the fight, because she wanted to do it with Jeremy. She didn't want it just to be, over a double and over a double. The camaraderie those two had, again, you can feel it in the movie. This was the horrible trying to tilt the 18-ton cell, obviously aided digitally. This was outside of the NASA facility, although it's supposed to be next to the ocean, so we added some seagull noises.
Am I?
It's in your nature.
Seagull noises make it all better. I try not to write the line where the villain sets himself up, but in this instance, I just did, because I wanted Coulson to have his moment. This was a little additional photography, punching him through the wall like that. We hadn't originally done that. He'd just bounced off it.
So that's what it does.
We wanted something with a little more impact. And that great moment of Coulson's, so that's what it does. We really wanted it to have done something extraordinary. So yes, Loki sets himself up. He does it again later. He asks Tony, "What have I to fear?" Because you're just asking for it. That's just a straight line. Try to avoid those where I can, but every now and then, you just got to give one to the team. And sorry for that.
Lever. Now.
Adding the bullets around Steve Rogers while he's crawling back up was something Jeff, the editor, brought late in the game, which really helped the idea that he was going to have trouble doing his bit. And Tony in the blender, well, I never get tired of that.
Sorry, boss. The guy rabbited.
Just stay awake. Eyes on me.
One of the hardest things, besides that entire sequence, was getting from there to here. Basically going from the big battle to the morning. Not the morning after. The morning with a U. In one version, I actually even removed this scene because I liked the other line as his last line. And I sort of also liked the idea that he died all alone. But then I am, it's not like I'm not a bastard. But Clark was so good and so funny on the day, but also so articulate about why it was important that his character die.
Agent Coulson is down.
That if there wasn't some loss, that
They're here.
it would be irresponsible. This is my other favorite shot in the movie, these two. And Drew Goddard was on set. I asked him why. I said, this is one of my favorite shots. He's like, yes, that's because it looks like Brian Hitch drew it. And it really does. Nothing looks more like the Ultimates than that one shot.
These were in Phil Coulson's jacket.
This shot here was one of the ones that I actually played music over. 2 crane shots up there, and then the one where Hill's walking away at the end. I would actually hum or play music to myself from other scores. In this case, it was Heart's War by Rachel Portman, which I wrote a lot of the movie to. In the other case, it was Gene Kino's Star Trek. But just to make sure it had the feeling that I wanted.
Yeah, I had that coming.
But I actually love very much what Alan Silvestri did here, because he didn't go for hard sentiment. It's actually kind of an eerie theme. It's beautiful, but it's not begging for your love, which is a canny move.
Even riskier. There was an idea.
You feel the loss in a different way than if he'd gone for sentiment. And here come the cards again. Again, that's one of those things that it just kept unfolding.
The idea was to bring together,
making me happier and happier. This was Robert's second day. He was like, I just love to do nothing and sit there. Actually, what he meant was, I don't. He's like, this makes me very uncomfortable. Here we go. To do this, to do nothing. And of course, in classic Robert fashion, he's never doing nothing. He's thinking the entire time. There's so much going on.
in Heroes.
I love what everybody's doing in this scene, even though Sam's doing all the talking.
Well,
And I do think this shot, by the way, another beauty. I had figured out the whole scene, and Seamus brought me back to the back of the set and said, look through here. Look through this lens. What if we did this? So that shot was Seamus's. And it is, it made me angry and jealous and full of sadness. No, it's just gorgeous. And it's perfect place to put the line. It's an old-fashioned notion, because if there is a single line in the movie that explains what the idea behind this movie is, it's that. Seamus was also, at the time, shooting a documentary about Harry Dean Stanton. And I was coming to the point where I realized I needed a scene where somebody accepts Banner as the Hulk besides Tony, having seen the Hulk, just accepts him. And for him to make the turn towards, I can help the team. And I got the idea of Harry Dean in my head and wrote a scene for him that was about 12 pages long and was just, hey, look, Bruce Banner fell into a Coen Brothers movie. But was so much fun to do. And then we actually got Harry to come and do it, which was such a privilege for me. And I totally got to geek out on him about the Missouri Breaks and Alien. And he was really engaging and so much fun. And, he has a certain way of talking that nobody quite like him. I had thought at one point, maybe it should be a child. Maybe a child should say, oh, you are a nice Mr. Hulk. I was like, no. His spirit guide should be Harry Dean. It should be someone who you just accept what he has to say.
You knew that?
This effect we started doing in camera, and after one close-up of Scarlet, Seamus just said, let's do it in post. It's gonna make our lives a lot easier, so we can get to the meat of the scene. And when we shot outside the infirmary, that one shot, this was Jeremy's first scene, really, that he did, and we shot outside, with the camera outside the thing, and after the first take, I said, Jeremy, I couldn't understand you, I couldn't hear you. And he said, oh, you're just going to use this for an establishing shot. Anyway, I said, no, Jeremy, you have to act in all the shots. He is very, very minimalist in what he does. And sometimes literally to the point of inaudibility, but he is working so hard. He is so invested. And this is one of my very favorite scenes. And what he's not doing is what he's doing. What the game that he's not giving away, while there's so much expressiveness on his face, is why he's a different kind of star than anybody else in the movie. And it's
Didn't need to know.
really gratifying to watch. And oddly enough, in 3D, it really shows up as well. And you don't come to 3D going, you know what? We'll do 3D and it'll help, you'll really feel the acting. It's not, usually you'll really feel the piranha. But in this case, when they added that dimensionality to his face and just every muscle twitch or a little wetness in the eyes, it registered on a different level. And I was really impressed by the beautiful conversion work, and also that it could help a scene as intimate and non-flyy as this one is pretty impressive. This is one of those scenes that I thought they were going to take away from me. I didn't think we'd get to get to keep. And here again, Alan brings in his Natasha theme, which is one of my happiest things. Cap had a theme. Alan wrote it. It's beautiful. Loki needed one. Natasha definitely needed one. And the way he plays it throughout the movie is different ways he utilizes it is really tremendous. This is a scene that I probably wrote a dozen times, trying to figure out how to anchor it.
No.
I know I needed to get them from point A to point we know exactly where Loki is, but I didn't know exactly how I was going to anchor it. The conflict between these two is, at one point, was the entire film. See, that hole in the wall behind him was digitally added in post. It does not really exist. Beautiful work, really.
You should have waited. You should have. Sometimes there isn't a way out, Tony. Right. I've heard that before.
This conflict was, became less a part of the movie, and so to really feel it was trickier. That moment, we're not soldiers. It was a yell at first, and Robert was hating it. And he came to me, he's like, no, I'm not feeling this. I'm like, no, that's because we haven't earned it. And so we brought it way down, and what he did right away after that, he brought so much reality to it. Once we realized we weren't supposed to be yelling. We were just supposed to play just the tip of the emotion and not all of it.
This is opening night, and Loki, he's a full.
The idea, the anchor, of course, was Coulson,
It's a monument built to the skies with his name plastered.
which was great. And then because that was going to come back again and again. And it needed to be. It needed to be the thing that affected them. Their own internal conflict at this point is pretty much over. It's more about the different ways they deal with the loss of Coulson.
Fly one of those jets? I can. You got a suit?
This was one of the things, his little yes there, where they had actually ADR'd Jeremy to be more audible, and I pulled it out because you know exactly what he's saying, and I love, again, that minimal thing. That field that Thor is in was one of those moments where I said, see, that looked great. I don't know what you guys were talking about. And Yannick confessed to me that the whole thing was digital, and they'd replaced the actual field. I just felt kind of dumb. This, the final scene in the story of the Captain America trading cards, was one that I really thought that they were gonna make me lose because
Or in Coulson's locker, not in his jacket.
it verges on unlikable for Fury. But for me, it's so important to who he is and to why Maria Hill goes from not understanding to being his absolute right arm.
Get our communications back up, whatever you have to do.
Right there,
Yes, sir.
the way she gives that line, that's a different person. And that, for me, is crucial. She doesn't appreciate his methods. She doesn't appreciate his manipulation. And then she sees how it works. And she knows what for. And that's it. From then on in, she's in. And that, to me, is really important. And the idea that Nick Fury lost someone we all know he was close to, that we love, and then his first thought was to go to that guy's locker, take his prized possession, and cover it in blood so he could trick the heroes of the movie into being the heroes of the movie. I'm sorry. That's a guy I love.
Barrier is pure energy.
Got to spend all of, 2 hours with Paul Bettany over the phone doing his ADR. What a delight. Jarvis is one of my favorite characters. Fun to write and a dream to work with, although I've still never met him. This, we actually at one point put the Once Upon a Time in the West theme over because I told everybody this I want to do pure Leone. I only want the close-up. I don't want to see. I've seen what we refer to as the car wash working already. I don't need to see it. I just want to see Tony eyeballing Loki.
You should have left your armor on for that.
Yeah.
And here we come to another scene that I did gazillion times as a writer. And it was always Loki manipulating Iron Man, Tony rather. And eventually I realized, well, I just want to do something different. What if he just spends the whole time bragging? What if Tony just comes in there and it's like, oh, I'm told we're super gonna win. It made me really happy, and I guess it made the trailer guys really happy because they used it over and over. But I didn't realize I was writing a trailer. I thought I was just writing a scene. But it really does help, rather than just having some sort of manufactured peril for his fragile little mind, to have him call out and say, yeah, actually, you put us all together, and we're more than the sum of our parts.
Every single one of them.
When Tony says it, it becomes true.
Not a great plan.
We believe it.
When they come, and they will, they'll come for you.
I have an army.
We have a Hulk.
He has a really nice pad, and I don't know if you know this, but apartment space in New York is expensive. And owning an entire building is even more expensive than just having one apartment. You got the word avenge in there. You didn't think I was going to. We did actually have it in Coulson's death scene.
How will your friends have time for me
And then I took it out.
when they're so busy fighting you?
This I liked too. Tom really sells the idea at first that, oh, maybe it's going to be Iron Man versus the Avengers. And then, oh, the logic of the thing is, he can't get at his heart. And Tom is very good. And this is something that anybody who knows any of my work will know I always require at going from, scenery crunching villain to Noel Coward play. And his little, oh, this usually works, is such a delight. He does get the crap kicked out of him during all this. And, and he does it with enormous elan and aplomb. And I always admire that. Iron Man trying to kill some hipsters. Now, this line I added probably 3 weeks before we finished.
One other person you pissed off.
He had another line. It wasn't really playing, but I hadn't come up with anything better. And then I realized, you know what? He has not mentioned Coulson one last time. It would be nice, especially because his name is Phil, then had already been set up by his first name is Agent. So this HUD trick, by the way, is one of the things I'm proudest of. I loved living in that HUD world, and the idea of spinning it around from the HUD to the battle HUD made me really happy. I can't even remember what HUD stands for. It's when he's in the helmet. It's like head underwear department. That's not what it stands for, but what we call it is the HUD, which of course inevitably causes me to go, long live the HUD. And then people just look at me like, why? What is he talking about? Because they didn't see the Hudsucker Proxy, and I sound like an idiot. I added this big wide here late in the game because I wanted to establish the space. We shot this in Albuquerque on our viaduct, and then this in New York off of the real viaduct, and then melded them together. Again, I was trying as hard as I could to establish the concept of the viaduct and the space that they were on and be specific about it. We call this the Spielberg shot. I don't know why. I'm not sure why we called it that. Just a funny name we made up. But getting a sense of that environment, and particularly where everybody is during the fight, and what their personal stakes are, and what they're fighting and where, the physicality of it, the specificity of that physicality, wherever we could have it, was enormously important to me. Because, as I had said from the very beginning, from literally the first meeting I ever took, if I was going to do this, I wanted to make a war movie and not a superhero movie. And in a war movie, you need to know what they're holding and where the enemy is coming from, and those physical details. And it's not enough just to make it pretty. Not that other people are, don't do the same thing. There's a lot of directors that I've watched and learned from, obviously. Cameron being seminal with things like the first Terminator and The Abyss. But you it's very easy to sort of let the chaos reign. And I'm very specific about keeping us in an exact space, exact spatial relations. One of the few times that I actually gave up on that is coming up was this stuff of Thor beating Loki up. Again, this was sort of rejiggered. It had come in a different place. But they'd been fighting for a while, and at this point, I gave up on the idea of showing the specificity. I went very long lens and slow motion and just let him kick the crap out of his brother, because at that point it wasn't about the spatial relationships anymore. It was about his rage. It was about, I am tired of my little brother, and I am going to kick the crap out of him. I don't know if I can say that on a commentary. I'm going to bleep the bleep out of him. No, wait, that sounds even worse. Now it sounds like I said something appalling. All right, skip that. When we first, before I ever even wrote the script, I wrote a 5-act document of the final battle. These guys we originally referred to as jumbos. I then mandated that everybody refer to them as leviathans instead, because I didn't think anybody could ever be afraid of something called a jumbo. And what if they made a toy? So changed it to leviathan. Right from the start, because we had such a limited time frame and people needed to start working on things, and this was going to be the biggest sequence in the movie, I wrote up the entire battle in a 5-act structure that would involve them fighting separately, coming together, fighting together, getting their heads handed to them, and eventually rising from the ashes. That structure, again, based more on war films or than anything from the superhero genre, because I just had too many damn heroes. I had so many that there was no way we could just have a nice, clean hero fight and everything was going to be good. I needed to make it so that you knew every time you weren't watching someone that they were in the thick of something else, something terrible, so that every time you came back to them, things were that much worse. Ryan Meinerding, Charlie Wen, Andy Park, the guys who did the concept designs for the costumes and the aliens, these guys are just visionaries. What fun to be handed things like these charioteers who can manipulate the things with their attached to their shoulders, manipulate them with their feet. It's fun. It feels different. Anything we could do to give these guys texture. We couldn't really work on their behavior as much as we wanted because they were just too expensive. Every time you cut to one of those guys, it's expensive. But you will notice if you look at them carefully, little behaviors like a guy pushing another guy out of the way here, trying to duck for cover, just things like that to keep them based in reality. We wanted to do a lot more with their battle plans and sort of their attack methods. But at the end of the day, the fact that they put this much of the movie in the movie is amazing to me. All of the stuff on the viaduct, we shot in Albuquerque inside a train station. And with all the gas and all the fire and all the explosions, and it was in the middle of the shoot. It was a nightmare. This shot here is another favorite. That was Levi. He's a parkour guy. And I requested, in addition to Sam, our regular stuntman, to have a guy who just did parkour so that Cap could do not just strong gags, but also particularly agile gags. And while we were shooting something else,
People inside and they're going to be running right.
I told Levi and the stunt team, go set up an obstacle course. Go make yourself a playground, and then we'll shoot it. And we got a cart with a Steadicam on it to shoot him doing his thing. And then Seamus, without telling anybody, took a little 5D, which are the little cameras that we used to shoot stunts and things, because you could put them near an explosion and not use up a fancy camera. He took one of them and he rode on the back of the cart, shooting it as a sort of handheld with a little pop zoom in it. And we saw that footage and it was so beautiful. And the first thing we did was, we need to convert this to 3D as soon as possible to see if the eye can take this much shake. Because on the day, I did very little in terms of camera movement, shaky cam, that is. That's sort of the thing that gives you that war movie verite, because I didn't know how much the audience would be able to take. And as it turned out, it's much easier to add it in post. But the template for what we could get away with and what we could do was that shot that we set up on the day, just off the cuff, and that Seamus shot his way without really telling anybody. That kind of on the fly feeling, when it, makes it into a movie of this size, not only makes it into the movie, but informs what the movie is going to be and how much we can take the other shots and give them that feeling. It's exciting. It's when something that run and gun is happening during a movie of this magnitude, you get a real anarchic underdog energy that is ultimately the thing you always want to capture.
Banner, just like you said.
And tell him to shoot.
And then the other thing you want to capture is that you got one of these. You don't usually get these. They're enormous. And they were lots of fun.
I don't see how that's a party.
It's, of course, the payoff that means everything in terms of the Hulk's arc, Banner's arc, that he's always got that. And that's the thing about Mark Ruffalo. He doesn't look like a guy who couldn't hurt a fly. He looks like a guy who has decided not to hurt a fly. He looks a little bit like the Hulk. And building a Hulk off of him and his performance and knowing that he had that kind of power and that he was just deciding not to use it, it's great. That pull off the mask and yell at them was a last-minute thing of mine. They were yelling. The idea here, on the day, we knew we were going to do the dolly shot, but on the day I said, okay, you've just punched the Leviathan, so these guys are going crazy. They're doing a war whoop that's also a yell of pain, like it's a Queen Bee thing. And that justifies the looking around and the dollying around so that it's not meaningless. But then later on, it said he's got to take his mask off and really yell at them so we can see his face and how pissed off he is. And then, of course, the Hulk yells back. And that's fun for me because the Hulk is basically saying, yeah, I'm the Hulk. What do you got? It's a real rallying cry for the Avengers. It's gang stuff. It's very cool.
Thor, you got to try and bottleneck that portal. Slow him down. You got the lightning. Light the bastards out. You and me, we stay here on the ground. We keep the fighting here. And Hulk.
And then
smash.
He gets to smile. It's the other thing about the Hulk that we wanted to capture is this is a fantasy for a reason. It's just the exultant nature of it, and those three shots do it as well as anything. We would have, a ton of Hulk. It's incredibly difficult and expensive, and I always feel like it's not enough. But he does when he's there. What he's doing pops so intensely, and it gives the lift, the audience the lift they need, and carries through from scene to scene. Eventually, he does show up. He shows up to take out Loki. He shows up. We do establish him, but he kind of shows up to save Tony. And the reason for that is simply that it was just too expensive to have too many interstitial shots of what was going on with him. And we had so much battle going on.
Find a tight corner.
I will roger that.
Once again, watch the eyes. Oh, yeah, that's right. That shot, obviously at some point I'm just going to go, we're making a 3D movie. Whee! I wanted to get as much tunnel work as I could, because there's nothing like feeling those things coming by you. It's, if you're gonna fly, then use it. But also, all of those places are real and do exist and are right, and keeping it contained in that kind of reality. Not only, I think, helps the movie, it helped us make it, because we knew where we wanted things to happen, what we wanted to achieve. Obviously, a lot of New York is being built digitally. Here we are back on the viaduct, which means we're in Albuquerque. Most of the street stuff is in Cleveland. A lot of the stuff you're faking, we tried to be very specific about where Stark Tower was, if it was ever in the background. And then apart from that, anything like that Iron Man flight bit where you're specifically using a piece of New York is just, it's money. It's golden, because you've got, you're going to be going to some made up places at some point. I love Scarlett so much in this scene. The weariness, the funniness.
I could use a boost, though.
She is the Black Widow, and then she gets to do something genuinely badass. Having the Black Widow to go ride on a chariot, it's a no-brainer. Who doesn't want to get onto that thing? And again, she couldn't kick that guy and just knock his lights out. But if he's not tethered, she could kick him, and then his own momentum with that thing flying could knock him off. And that kind of physical reality was really important. Now, this shot, again, no special effects in this one, all done in camera. This one was the very last shot that was delivered, not surprisingly. And we kept getting that guy closer and closer to Hawkeye, because we thought it was hilarious that he shot him from a distance of 2 inches. But we also talked about cutting this shot. We were long, money was, it was tough. And every now and then somebody would say, well, maybe we don't need the tie-in shot. And then somebody else would say, no, I think that's why we're here. I think the tie-in shot is the whole point, is that's when the Avengers are the Avengers. And that's the point of that shot. And we can't possibly lose it. And then you knock a Norse guy out of frame, because it's always good to do that. Classy. Dare see his eyes change back. I actually love what Stellan does here, because he goes from where am I to the horror to how do I work my way through this, all in the one shot. And that scene wasn't actually in it. He asked, can I wake up, as a transition, and I liked the idea of it. Stellan's wonderful to work with. That guy just loves being on a set.
They cornered a lot of civilians in there.
I'm on it.
And that turned out to be a really important transitional piece. This was another sequence that nearly fell out of the movie a lot of times. People didn't necessarily respond to it before it was finished. To me, we pulled his mask off in it. Didn't have anywhere else to do that. But B, it just, it put him with people. It gave him that moment of hiding behind the shield and this moment, which Sam did all in one. I still don't know how.
Director Fury, the Council has made a decision.
I recognize the council has made a decision. But given that it's a stupid-ass decision, I've elected to ignore it.
That moment of the camera tracking around Steve and then tracking around Fury in the opposite direction. Again, that's what we call director's intent, meaning those two sequences were nowhere near each other in the original cut. And then we discovered, they go rather well together. Originally, you can see that the movie actually opened with that moment for Steve of, everything's gone wrong. And when we took that out, we didn't know how much of that we could keep. But we wanted, without going into full war movie cliche, we wanted to have that moment of we're losing here. And it would have to be Captain America who has it. That's a great moment to watch with an audience, I have to say, because when he catches the arrow, people are like, oh, damn, Loki totally... And then he blows up. And to have those little rhythms is great fun. Obviously, that's sort of Hulkus ex machina. Again, we couldn't really show him where he was coming from.
One of you beneath me. I am a god, you
I don't know what I need to say about this. I'm just going to shut up for a
not
second.
be bullied by...
Puny god.
Okay, I think maybe what I need to say about that is that if I did nothing else for the last 2 years, if I had literally just sat on my bum doing nothing, and had made that little scene, I would feel that I had accomplished something in this world.
It's not your fault.
Does anything make me happier? It does not. And Tom, with his leg tied to a rope, giving his great moment of triumph and then being yanked out of frame. It was funny before we even had a Hulk, before we even had any visuals. It was just funny watching the footage of Tom. And then watching him get ragdolled. It's a sequence I fought hard for because I believed that it would be the best thing ever. And, you know, and I'm not going to lie, I think it is. It just gives me joy. I think the Leviathan kind of looks like a sow bug in that shot, which is unfortunate.
Jarvis? You ever hear the tale of Jonah?
I wouldn't consider him a role model.
Inside of that purple monster used to be kind of pink, and let's just say we decided purple alien color was a much better idea, especially for the kids. This is another moment, again, a second unit shot, and Jeremy just bringing it, because that's him. Well, that was him jumping and turning and shooting. And obviously, we added digitally what was behind him, but he gave us, you know, extraordinary footage. He's got that hero thing. It was the animator who pitched the kick. I had originally said the Hulk would not kick people, but that particular kick was just so great. And that was one piece of animation we got back in its early stages, and everybody was just floored by it, just loving it.
Sir, we have a bird in motion. Anyone on the deck? We have a...
This is the moment where Nick Fury runs.
Repeat, takeoff is not authorized.
He does look so good with a rocket launcher.
Stark, you hear me? You have a missile headed straight for the city.
How long?
3 minutes, max. Payload will wipe out Midtown.
Jarvis, put everything we got into the thrusters.
I just did.
It's a little thing, but when he says put everything we've got into the thrusters and Jarvis says, I just did, it's so easy to fall into the, I'm British, I'm a worrywart. No, so you mustn't, which Jarvis occasionally does. And I love the idea that in the heat of battle, Jarvis is just down with him. They're thinking as one. That means a lot to me. This shot obviously was in the very first concept of the very first script. Have the two of them set back to back with their shield and hammer coming back to them. That one little cutaway of Cap, that was another bit that the editor found, and they actually added some laser beams in it, and I took them out because it looked so much better as just found footage. It felt like war. Those guys sell the idea that we're going to lose this war in that scene. better than at any other point. It's some of my favorite work from those two guys.
Can anybody copy? I can shut the portal down.
Do it! No, wait. Stark, these things are still coming.
I got a nuke coming in. It's going to blow in less than a minute. I know just where to put it.
This was difficult to choreograph. I was mainly going, God, I hope nobody's seen the first Superman movie.
You know that's a one-way trip.
Because I'm not the first person to carry a missile. But we still had to do it. This shot in the HUD was first time. I mean, they'd done some looks to the side, but nobody had done a full, just straight on profile. It was really fun, and if you watch carefully, what Robert's doing there is really subtle and really beautiful. The idea that was always in the thing and was in that first outline of the battle of the sacrifice play was really central. That Tony, we didn't want it to be, oh, Callow Tony learns to care, but at the same time, we did want the conflict between him and Steve to be resolved in his acceptance of Steve's point of view and of him, as we would say, throwing himself on the wire so the other guy could crawl across. And this is his moment to do that. And then we get into the inevitable sort of queen bee. Oh, we kill the head and then all the soldiers fall down dead. I'm not proud of that either. Okay. That's, it was necessary to make sure we understood that they didn't have to just clean up for the next 17 hours by still fighting, but so that they could actually have their moment of triumph. But it's a device that I am not fond of and probably shouldn't have brought up. I love the way the gravity catches him just as he goes through. Those little bits of physical reality in what is an absurd, portal through space concept are extremely necessary. And there it is, the payoff of all of their stuff. Hulk saves Iron Man because he likes him. And then he's like, get off me, because he's still the Hulk. And I like the fact that he wakes him up by being annoyed with him. All of the gack around his face is digital. The stuff that they can add, the tiny details that they can add, at some point it becomes frightening and is probably evil. It's very useful.
What the hell? What just happened? Please tell me nobody kissed me.
That line, please tell me nobody kissed me, originally written with Natasha there and a different run. It was supposed to be a fairy tale reference.
All right, hey. All right.
I think it read sort of in a different way, which was unfortunate. But then his, yay, all right, guys, that little moment, arm raising moment, may be my favorite moment of his. Now, of course, we get to what's really important about this, the shawarma, which is just, Robert asking for more on the day, and I tossed him a bunch of stuff, and one of them was about shawarma, and he just took shawarma, and, well, let's say he ran with it. And as some of us know, it ran away with us. It occurred to me that you might think that Hawkeye was tiny in this shot. He's actually kneeling right in front of Loki. And we had a shot from behind them that we ended up cutting. And then I was like, I hope that people just read this as cool and not that he's a tiny, tiny Hawkeye. Because I don't think people actually noticed, but at the time, once we would cut it, I realized that we had some trouble. This came late. Stuff that we added. There was some talk about we need some sort of celebration, and I had a whole sort of wraparound, which you'll see in the deleted scenes, that is not in the film. We did need some kind of resolve after that Loki moment that said the Avengers have had an impact on the world. We also needed a Stan cameo because we'd cut the scene he was in with Cap.
This was their fight. Where are they now?
Tough questions are being asked about
It ultimately, you'll also see in the deleted scenes a great deal of stuff with the waitress because she had been in a scene with Cap, and we'd spent a lot more time with her. So I was glad that we got to come back to her and that she would lend real humanity to what was going on, because you always wanted to keep that man on the street perspective, even while you had your gods and your monsters gadding about.
I'm not currently tracking their whereabouts. I'd say they've earned...
The shoot in New York, in Central Park that is,
Tesseract is where it belongs.
was a nightmare for me. Thank God we were shooting at MOS without sound, because there were paparazzi at the edge of every frame. Everybody decided to bring their friends and families. I mean, everybody. There was a mob between me at the monitor and the actors. It was just a day of horrors for filming, because we were just out in the open and everybody either wanted to be a part of it or wanted to get a pic of it.
They surely are.
We weren't allowed to show the car, so we had to keep that wrapped up until we were driving it. And in general, that was a long day, and not a day where we shot that much. Not a problem with the actors, just a problem being heard. The only problem with the actors, and that day was no exception, was they will just have a good time and talk when I'm trying to make my movie. And they're all just catching up with each other and laughing and scratching, and I'm just like, guys, come on. We totally have to make a whole film. Quit it. That was also one of the last days of the shoot, so I was like, a skeleton man at that point.
Because we'll need them.
I love her acceptance of what he has to say now, and this was the other shot where I had to hum a little music to make sure that we got it. We did one take of this. Now, if you look carefully at that shot, you can basically see that the design of the helicarrier, and this was one of the people in the art department, they, instead of making it NORAD-like or NASA-like, what they did was they made an eagle shape, and all of the consoles make the wings of the eagle from the modern version of the design of the SHIELD logo. This was originally at the end of the battle, and it was Kevin who said, "Buddy, that's the end of the film." And he wasn't wrong. And that's the end of this commentary.